Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Talk With, the second episode I'm recording on this sort of second series type thing. Right. Well, I'm here with the one, the only Jimmy Wolfe. Introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Jimi Wolfe, aka CaptainJimiPie. I'm probably most well known for my YouTube series of many different videos I do, custom figures, reviews of things, my fan theories, etc. But I've also, obviously, recently I've started doing a bit of more voice work, working with the lovely people over at TT. I've done a few things on Overton Productions as well. And I want to say I could be completely off on this. I lose track of what I'm doing. I want to say that I think I've done a couple of things on Dwem as well. So I've sort of been all across the board.
All across the board, all across the board. But first things first, how are you?
I am very well, thank you. It's literally just started my Christmas first day of my sort of Christmas holidays today.
Mm,
So nice and relaxed, looking forward to a nice bit of time off and just chilling out, really.
fair enough, fair enough. Got any Christmas plans this year?
No, not really. So it's literally just usual of being over, seeing my family. So we go over to my sister's. Obviously, she's there with her husband, my two nephews, and then it's my mum, dad, and my other half, Catherine's, coming along as well. Other than that, it's pretty much just sitting down, chilling out, not doing a lot. We recently, it's entirely irrelevant to the rest of the podcast, but we recently put in an offer on a house. All the mortgage seems to have gone through now, which is great. So we're literally just in the sort of final planning stages of doing all that. So it's probably going to be a fair bit of paperwork to do, but it's kind of like, well, I've got the time to do it now. I can't really try and put it off.
Yes, that's pretty much me with my uni work as well. Off now. But yeah, I'm glad everything's going well, and I'm glad Christmas is going well. I mean, sitting down and having time to relax is probably one of the best plans to have when it comes to Christmas, really.
That's what I mean. You know, you sit there and you think, oh, I should do this, do that. And you just think, actually, I really do just want to do nothing, you
Yeah.
know. I literally don't want to do anything. My only concrete plans for this year are watching the Christmas special for Doctor Who, because we
I
finally got one again.
oh yeah, finally. I'm really looking forward to it. I love the New Year's Day specials. I thought that was great. I really enjoyed them. But you can't beat Doctor Who at Christmas.
It's just not the same. It's just not the same. It's a Christmas Day thing. It's a tradition. And it was one of those things that, when they started doing them in 2005 onwards, it was kind of like one of those things that I was always told, it's like, oh, I'm going to go now. I'm going to go and watch it. And we're saying, no, you're being really antisocial and things like that. I was like, I don't care. I'm going to go and watch it.
You know
And then
what?
over the years, sort of one or two of my family members sort of trickled in and sort of started watching it as well. And then it got to the point where literally about sort of 3 or 4 years before they stopped doing them, maybe a bit less than that, it was a case of everyone was just sat around the table going, what is it on yet? What time is it? And then it was just as soon as I was up, everyone's like, right, come on, that's it, we're going. And everyone just sat down and watched it. So it'd be interesting to see if we get that same sort of thing again. But it's kind of like the problem now is that I'm at a point where that my protective uncle's going to come out because my nephews are 3 and 6, and the 6-year-old not so much, but the 3-year-old. I've seen the clips with like the Goblin King, and I'm looking at it thinking he's going to be quite scared by this. I maybe should say don't watch it, but it's like how? Because everyone else is potentially going to be in there watching it as well.
Yeah, it's like yeah, it's I mean, it's going to be one of those episodes that may be a bit scary for youngins, but it looks fun, I
But
think.
it's it does look fun. At the end of the day, it's coming on at what is it, 5 just before 6 o'clock. It's a family show. It's set at sort of its time slot is a family time. So I think it's going to be one of the. And again, it's not Christmas without a good spooky. They do obviously their ghost stories for Christmas and things like that. So it's
Yeah.
of course you got to have something in there that's a little bit spooky.
Yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts about it from what we've seen so far on the Christmas special? Obviously, from when this will be released, I think the Christmas special will be out.
It will have been seen, yeah. So we're recording this on the 22nd of December for those interested. So no, I'm looking forward to it. I'm certainly interested to see how they're going to sort of go about it and what they're going to do. But from everything we've seen, it does look very good. And we've not seen a huge amount, but what we have seen has been very good. The dynamic between Ruby and the Doctor is going to be really good. Obviously, we've seen the new sonic screwdriver, which obviously I know was quite divisive, but I personally I like the look of it. I myself, it looks both futuristic and contemporary at the same time. Because in a modern world where everything's remote controlled, it does look. A load of people have said they've made it looks like the remote from Click, and it's like, well, it does though, because that's the whole point of it, isn't it? Really, that's what it's always been. It's been a remote control. We call it a sonic screwdriver, but we've only ever seen it actually do screws, what, 3 times?
Yeah, that was probably some of their first
The
appearance.
War Games, there was the War Games, I think the Revenge of the Cybermen, and maybe a couple of other times. We've actually only ever seen it do screws.
Uh, I,
Um,
I'm really
but
looking forward to seeing what they do with it. I managed to see the prop in London when they.
yes, you did.
It looks so good in person.
Mm.
There was James Sutton taking all the photos he could of it.
Of course, yes, of course he was. That's like, that's his summoning. There's a prop somewhere. Oh, and it was I mean, this is entirely unrelated, but just on the subject of props and Sutton, it was like I was watching. Obviously, there was the Russell T Davies documentary on the
Yeah.
BBC, and they went to that warehouse where they've been storing all the props from like the experience and things like that. And as I was watching that, I was like, I guarantee Sutton knows exactly where that is. He's probably been stood in that very room.
I think Sutton was crying at the Slovene. It's so worn
Oh, it looks, yeah.
in face. But yeah. If anyone doesn't know Sutton, go check out the talk with Sutton.
Yes.
They're long enough for you to get to know him a bit.
Oh, I
Um,
was gonna, yeah, yeah. I mean, all you got to say to that man is, so Doctor Who props, and you could just sit down for about
oh,
like 3 hours. He'll just go off on
gosh,
one,
yeah,
and it's
I really,
he's one of those people you can quite happily sit there and listen to him for hours because you never know what he's gonna come out with in many different respects,
mm.
and you're always going to learn something about a Doctor Who prop that you think, where's that? And I guarantee you, he will know.
Oh, he will go straight away. But talking of Doctor Who props and stuff like that, of course, you've made recently for some fan doctors over at TT, you've made a few sonic screwdrivers for people. What's it been like creating original sonic screwdrivers for people?
It's always fun because at the end of the day, funny enough, I have them here to hand. So I will show them because I haven't actually sent them yet. I've got them here and then I've got the bags there ready up to go. So we have this one is going to be for James York's Queer Doctor.
Wow.
And then we've got this one for Abby Louise's Constellation Doctor. Um, there's so much fun to do because obviously I do them on the 3D printer, but it's a lot of fun to do because at the end of the day, it's something that is going to be sort of slightly more unique looking and things like that. But it's a learning curve for me as well because I put these things, people send me the design, I sort of put it into like a 3D printing design, whatever you want to call it. And then it's just a case of just see what works, what doesn't, because it's very easy to look at a design and see it, but then when you actually go to putting it together, you've got to realize that actually there are some things that work, some things that don't, or structurally and differences and changes and things like that. But yeah, no, it's great because, like I said, it's something I enjoy doing. I learn something out of it, and it's fun to see what other people come up with. Because Connor Sumner's just asked me as well to do one for his Venture Doctor, and he sent me a design which is really good, very unique looking. It's sort of a cross between something out of, I don't know Star Trek, so I couldn't tell you what it is, but it's a cross between something out of Star Trek and the new sonic screwdriver for the 15th Doctor. It's got sort of lots of buttons and dials. It looks real. The design he's good. Look, the design he's given me looks really good. And it's one of those things that I'm looking at it thinking, I've got to get it from a 2D design to a 3D one, but you can kind of just see it. But at the same time, it's like I'm going to take a bit of artistic license, send it back over to him, and then just say to him, right, just be honest, just be absolutely 100% critical and let me know what you think because I want to get this looking how you want it.
Yeah, it's very interesting seeing them come to life. I mean, I really really like the one you made for Metal, the Metal Doctor.
Oh, that one. Yes, of course I did them. I did the Metal Doctor Sonic as well. So that one was definitely one that was a bit of a challenge because it bears in a good way. I will say it only bears a passing resemblance to the original drawing because there were just certain limitations that I had to work with from the drawing, and it's always slightly annoying for me because it's like I see the drawing, it's like I want to get it as close as I possibly can.
Yeah,
And I started doing things like all the vines and things that go around it. I tried to model those in 3D and it was just so difficult to do. So I ended up sculpting those on by hand. But at the same time, it was one of those things that you just put it together. And the moment you sort of put it on there and you look at it and think like, yep, I can see exactly where this is going. And again, every step of the way, I was letting Chelsea and Abby know. Because when I started it, funny enough, when I started it was Abby Louise over at TT Productions. I should stress for
yeah,
make it clear to people who I'm talking about here. So it was Abby Louise over at TT Productions. She asked me to do it, at which point I didn't know who the Metal Doctor was. This was at a point where it was still being kept secret.
yeah.
And so I didn't know who it was. And eventually she basically just said, I will get them to message you. So Chelsea Lagan messaged me, so I knew that she was then going to be the Metal Doctor. So I was in that inner circle, and then about 2 weeks before we went to before it was going to be revealed initially to everyone who was at the getaway, and obviously later on at that, I was literally in a conversation. I think it was with Abby and Connor Chadwick from Overton, and I was in a conversation and I nearly let it slip. And I was literally there just talking about. I was literally just talking about this. I was saying about Sonic building and things like that. And I was gonna. And Abby was just like, Jimmy, shut up, be quiet. And it was that point I realized, yep, okay,
Yep.
nearly let that one slip because Connor was the one person we were trying to keep it from to surprise him. So I nearly let that one slip. But no, that was a great one to build. It was really fun.
Speaking of fan doctors over at TT, of course you play your own fan doctor, which was a great segue, by the way.
Yes.
You play your own fan doctor over there called the Agency Doctor. For everyone
Yes.
watching, what's the Agency Doctor like? Yeah.
So the agency doctor is sort of he's a difficult one to describe. So plot wise, this is essentially uh he is regenerated from now I can say this because I know the first episode. So he regenerates from the doctor that Matt Chambers is playing. I want to say he was called the Eternal Doctor. I don't think he is. I can't remember his name now, but he's literally just had his first sort of audio come out. I
Yeah.
highly recommend going and listen to it over on TT. So I follow on from him, and essentially, the agency doctor, his story starts off with he's been imprisoned in Sharda for, as yet, at the time of recording this, undisclosed reasons, which will be revealed in Chambers's doctor's stories. And he is released from Sharda on the condition that he undergoes a regeneration, and he then basically goes and works for the CIA, the Celestial Intervention Agency, in part. So it's kind of like a sort of season 6B kind of thing. But obviously, I've got other sort of other adventures happen in between and things like that because I didn't want it to tie him down completely to working solely for the CIA. So it's kind of like he gets called in as and when. And he is partnered up with a character called Traxia, who is another time lady, who is played by the wonderful Kath Meal.
Mm-hmm.
She's just absolutely fantastic. You know, she's as soon as she got that script and she did the first thing, she was just like she understood the assignment. So yeah, so she's basically his parole officer essentially. So she's there to make sure that he behaves himself and does what he's supposed to do and things like that. But at the same time, she's a character who's never been off Gallifrey. She's like, so they've partnered her with the Doctor, so
Yeah.
she can keep an eye on him, but he can sort of show her how
It's
the
quite like
universe works.
a sort of Doctor Romana dynamic mixed with maybe a bit of
Yes.
Leela, because Leela obviously doesn't
There
come.
is a bit of yes. That's a good comparison, actually. I've never thought of that one before. That is a very good
Yeah.
comparison. So yeah, so that's been it's been a joy. I've only done 2 episodes so far. It's been a joy to play. Obviously the first one was the regeneration episode. The second one was about a killer steam engine because I've always wanted to do a story like that, then why not? And then the third one, which isn't out yet, it was supposed to be out before the end of the year, but due to ongoing things, work-wise, mortgages, etc., things like that, it's just I didn't manage to get round to it. But I will say at this point is if it's not out already, then this will be a little bit of an inside tidbit for people. If it is out already, then it's a reason for you to go and check it out on TT. It's actually going to see the return of the Shauka.
Ah,
And it's going to be a sort of because obviously the TT universe is sort of it's a continuation of the main television series universe. Where exactly Scream of the Shauka fits into that, I don't know. But from my point of view, from writing the story, it's a sort of semi-sequel because it takes place after Scream of the Shauka, but in writing it, it's not taking place in the same universe as
yeah.
Scream of the Shauka. So it's a semi sequel that I've always thought about writing it. I've always wanted to write it, and I just sort of never got around to it. I never found the right way to sort of fit it into anything. So I thought it was a good one to sort of good one to do. But it's going to be it's a very fun one to do. We've got an absolutely fantastic cast in it and lovely array of characters as well. Because obviously it's not only the Shauka, but we've also got the Brigadier is going to make a reappearance in it as well. which is going to be a great one which is obviously at this point we've recorded it already, so I've heard it. I've not heard the finished edit because I haven't done it yet, but the everyone's performances were just absolutely spot on. It was one of those scripts where I really feel like I threw a lot at people,
Mm.
but just the minute that everyone was there recording it, it was just everyone knew, everyone just got it.
That's always what you get with TT whenever you're doing a story with people. I think it's always like that kind of Zencaster environment as well. So like group record
Yes.
really brings out the best in people. So
Yeah.
I like doing things. And I'm really looking forward to listening to that story. I've always held the Screaming Shulker in high regard because it's a
Haven't
great.
we all?
I'm looking forward to seeing what you do with a sequel. What's it like playing the Doctor? What how
It's I mean it's I was going to say it's a lot of fun. Of course it's a lot of fun. But it's one of those things that you really can sort of, the nice thing about it is it's one of those roles, obviously even as a fan doctor, it's one of those roles that really is just like, you go, here's a blank slate, do what you want with it, you've basically got your continuity and your timelines and things. It's always good to follow and things like that, but in terms of a characterization, you just do what you do. And I don't think I ever had any kind of specific characterization for the agency doctor when I started doing it. It was just kind of like, just see what happens, really. And he's sort of developed into this sort of slightly, if I had to put him down, I would say he's a sort of, he's a mix of sort of two and war, but
Ooh.
with a bit of 10 thrown in there, because I think he's got, obviously he's got the the sort of mission statement of two with working for the CIA, but he's not one to suffer fools gladly, very much like war, but he's also just, at times he's an utter chaotic mess, rather like 10. And he has these moments of long, I
Yeah,
don't know where this started, but he has these moments of long rambling moments that's kind of become a bit of a tradition now in the scripts, where it's expected of me to get an agency ad lib in there somewhere.
that is probably the best description I've ever heard of the 10th Doctor, a chaotic mess.
A chaotic mess, because he just is.
Yeah, yeah, Agency is a very interesting Doctor, and I really am looking forward to hearing more. It is, yeah,
I've
really.
got many, many stories planned. As I said, they're all going to come together. The second season is already planned out. I've already got one of the scripts. So James York has written a fantastic script that will see the return of the cheetah people from survival. Absolutely fantastic script. He's, always good. It's always a James York script is always a delight to go through, because it's
Yeah.
always good. He's got a good level of seriousness, a good level of comedy. And then the second series is sort of already been planned out as well. So we've got a few other returning faces, both allies and enemies as well, which will be fun.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple of things. So we're doing a series called Multiversal, which I think you're in.
I'm
You
in.
are in, actually. That's the point. So we're doing this multiversal thing, which is kind of like a multiverse crossover kind of thing,
Mm.
which is going to be, again, a lot of fun to do, and things like that. And then we've got sort of a lot of sort of different doctors popping in, popping out, and it's, again, I think it's going to be, in a good way. It's, again, another thing that I think you could describe as a chaotic mess, but
Yeah.
it's going to be, it's going to be a carnage of a recording. But half the time, that's one of the beautiful things about TT, and Overton and Dwem and things like that, is you never know what's going to happen during, you know what's going to happen during a recording, because you think everyone knows what they are, but the read throughs are always just, you never know what's going to occur. There's always some in joke, or everyone just goes off script, and it's just
I know.
it's so much fun.
I was standing in for someone's wife at a TT recording the other day. I was playing a character's wife, called Hilda, in a recent Metal Doctor story. You never know what you're gonna get in a
No,
TT, and
no,
it's brilliant. I love it. And I'm looking forward to Multiversal. There's something to be said for multiverse crossovers and chaotic messes. I'm
I'm
perfect
just I'm a sucker for a multi-doctor story. I really am.
for that. I wouldn't be doing something called the 100 Doctors if I wasn't.
Well, this is yes, quite exactly. I've forgotten about your 100 doctors.
Oh,
I love the fact that you set yourself that target, and I just know for a fact that you set yourself that target. You went, this is a great idea, and then you went, now I've got to do it.
oh, I love it. It's so it's a chaotic mess, but I love it. I feel like that can sum up a lot of stories.
I'm so looking forward to 100 doctors. It's going to be brilliant.
Been a lot of fun. And Acts 1 and 2, which are out now, shameless plug.
Yes,
Uh, they were a lot of fun as well. It's been one hell of a project, and of course you're in it as well, naturally.
yes, I am. Agency does pop up every now and
I
again.
know who's not in it at this point.
No, I think everybody is.
And it's so much fun doing that project. But yeah, going on to some of your other content, of course,
Mhm.
we've mentioned props, we've mentioned printing 3D sonic screwdrivers. There is
Yes.
one prop I was actually talking to you about the other day that I gained quite an interest in that not many people would know about, but it's the first Doctor Sonic from Lego Dimensions.
Yes. So I can't actually remember how that came about. I think it was just one of those things that I just decided to do it because I think I was doing research for a video actually. And there is a book, one of the expanded medias. I'm not sure which range it is, but I think it's called Venusian Lullaby,
Yeah,
which features the first Doctor, and he has a sonic screwdriver, and it is implied to be the same one that the second Doctor has in sort of the War Games era, the pen-like kind of one. And then I think that was one of those things that it was always sort of, potentially one of those things that I wanted to do. And then I, like many people, bought Lego Dimensions to get the Doctor Who things. And obviously, in that, each of the Doctors has their own Sonic. But the first Doctor has one, obviously, and it's the one with the red light at the end. And weirdly, the second Doctor has the same one for some reason. I don't know why. But it was one of those ones that I just looked at it and I thought, yeah, why not? I'll give it a go to come out. And it's a really nice, simple design because I'm not quite sure where they got the design from in Lego Dimensions. Because it looks like the second Doctor's, but it's also got the kind of guard bit at the end, which kind of looks like a bit more like the one out of the is it the Dominators, or it's
yeah.
got sort of an odd shape to it. So it's just one of those ones that I just looked at it and I thought, yeah, I'll give that a crack and put that together. And it was quite a it was one of those ones that I think I just put together. I just thought I'll do it and I put it together, and it seems like now it's popping up everywhere. I've seen, I did it as a just as a little side project thing, and then obviously you said it had popped up in a video. The first Doctor's Lego Dimension popped up in a video. I'm on a 3D printing Facebook group where someone else was talking about it and saying they've done their version. And then someone else was saying, "Oh yeah, we saw this reference picture," and then Sutton came up and he said, "Oh yeah, we looked at Jimmy's one to do as an actual prop at some point." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Which
Yeah,
is just one of those things that it was just a random offhand project that seems to have sort of
it's so
expanded.
it's such a wonderfully niche prop that I just
Mm,
and as soon as I saw it, I thought I gotta ask someone about this. I gotta ask you about it. I gotta ask Sutton
yeah,
about wonderfully niche. That's what I love about the Doctor Who community sometimes. It's quite a lot of time we just latch on to something that's just so
yeah.
niche. I love it. But
You'll see something, you'll see one thing, and then you might be the only person that knows about it, but then you'll start asking around, and other people will be like, "How have I never heard of this before?" And then suddenly it's everywhere.
well, talking of going aside from Sonic for a second, of course you make other figures as well, naturally.
Yes,
Quite a lot. What? How
I've
did you?
lost count.
I think even I have. I mean, looking for your videos, but it's a lot of fun watching you create them and watching them
Mm.
live on your channel. What's it been like getting into what was it like getting into figure creation at first?
So it was kind of one of those things that I'd always been quite an arts and crafts person growing up. I'd always liked sort of doing, little airfix models and things like that. And I think it just got to the point where there were figures that I wanted that we didn't have. So
Mm,
I just thought I'd take a crack at making them myself. And this was at a time when I was looking for work, so I didn't have anything else to do with my time. So I just sort of carried on and it just sort of continued and built and things like that.
mm,
Um, and it was just a hobby, and it still very much is. It's just one of those things that I do just offhand to give myself something to do. And then I just decided at one point as well that I thought, you know what, I'll record these and put them up on YouTube. People might be interested. And it sort of spiraled into this whole
Yeah.
YouTube thing that I've started now, that I've carried on and started doing. But it was, yeah, it was actually just a hobby. It was just one of those things that I just thought I want something to do with my time. I like Doctor Who. There's some figures that we don't have, so I'll have a crack at making some myself.
And here we are.
And here we are.
Here we are.
God knows how much money later, but
Yeah, I can't, oh God, I can't imagine. Uh, but it is a lot of fun watching your videos. And what would you say some of your favorite figures that you've made?
oh, so many times I get asked that question. It's always a different answer, I'll be perfectly honest, because it's one of those things like I could say, I mean, I'm literally just looking at my desk now. I can see several things that I've done which I am very happy with, but I know they're going to change. So I've got I literally just finished off Weeping Angel
Oh,
13th Doctor.
very
So I
nice.
did that the other day just to finish that one off. But then I have done uh the Seventh Doctor from his actual audition tape. That's Sylvester McCoy's audition tape. So I've got that one. Uh, this is a variant that I can't believe we've never had before. It's the 11th Doctor in his white tuxedo.
Yeah, wait. Yeah, we haven't got that, have
We've
we?
never had that variant. A variant that we haven't had but was prototyped at one point was the hatted version of the season 18 Doctor. But again, that's literally just what I've immediately got here on my desk. Obviously, I've got tons and hundreds of them in the other room. So I think really sort of pinning it down to a specific one would be quite quite difficult.
Mm.
I don't know really. I really don't know what I could choose. I think there are too many. There's too many to choose from because it was one of those things again that we just didn't have some things, and I just decided to do it. I think I do have a favorite for an obscure variant. What do I mean by that? So obviously we've got lots of figures that we don't have.
Yeah.
So, for example, at the time of recording, we don't have, say, for example, a 15th Doctor figure. Um, Obviously, it's going to come out at some point because it's the main character. I know there's lots of sort of talk about saying, people say we haven't had this, we haven't had that, but it's one of those ones. We will get it eventually, along with other sort of incarnations of the Master and other Doctors and things like that. But I do like it when you find an obscure variant from, say, a comic
Yeah.
or an audio or something like that that you know is never going to become an actual figure.
Mm.
Um, and it's just a lot of fun to do.
I really, really like that Seventh Doctor audition one. That one
It
is
was just it was just one of those ones that I think I just realized I had the parts to do it. It's literally just a Seventh Doctor figure with an extra sculpted tie with a second Doctor coat, and it's a really nice, simple variant, really simple repaint variant. It was just one of those fun ones, you know. It was one that I never really sort of intended to put together, but I just sort of had the parts, put them together. And it really is that kind of sort of thing that I have those moments where it's sort of a running joke that I just tip out my parts bin and it's kind of like reading tea leaves. You tip it out, you just go, and if there's certain parts there, you look at the thing like those parts would go together, those would, oh, I could make that out of that. And it's
I tell you what,
it's just whatever pops out, really.
tell you what were two of my favorite figures from you, because you did actually make two for me and turn them my way. Uh,
Yes, I did.
and they're used in my intro, which unfortunately I don't use for a talk with, but I use for literally every other video I've put out there. Is the BBC Two Doctor Who Night Dalek, uh,
Yes.
which I've got over there, but I'll probably prepare it when we start the next call. Uh, uh, there's a little post box Dalek from the CBBC Idents, which is
Which I have to admit, I never even knew existed until you showed it to me. That was after my time for CBBC, but it was a really fun one to put together just because
it's
they're
so
just
wonderful.
fun.
It's so wonderfully niche and fun. I mean, who would have thought a post box Dalek? I mean, it's well,
Quite.
I assume quite a few kids have walked past like post boxes and thought, "Oh yeah, that's a Dalek." I mean,
Oh, probably.
that was actually that's a side tangent. I used to make everything into a Dalek growing up. There was a one time in primary school where I was asked to, where we were all asked to like draw something for like the beach, and there
Yeah.
were beach huts, which I made the beach hut into a Dalek,
I
and yeah,
love it.
yeah, it was brilliant. back, although people watching wouldn't have been away from wildest.
You would never know.
Another question I kind of want to ask you is sort of what have been the most difficult figures to create? What have been the most like either time consuming or when it comes to cost and everything? Either one really.
It's a good question. I suppose probably one of the most difficult, actually, which I have right here. Although I say it's the most difficult, most challenging would probably be a better example, was definitely my 5-inch Bessie
Oh,
model.
yeah, Bessie.
Yeah, so that was basically, I mean, this was entirely 3D printed from scratch and designed. I had to do, design all these bits. I didn't have a starting point or anything like that. The only bits that I didn't design on this was this back piece for the roof was actually a remix of someone else's. But other than that, all of this stuff I basically just used to do references from just pictures and things like that, and just had to go back so many times. Um, but yeah, I would say that was probably the most difficult, but at the same time, I mean, difficult in terms of just challenge.
Yeah.
But it is again one of the ones that's the most rewarding because obviously I've done a few other ones like other TARDISes and the Masters TARDISes and things like that. But yeah, I would say there hasn't really been one that's I haven't really come across any that have been so difficult that I've given up doing them or that I've sort of found myself in too much of a challenge because I like to sort of pick and choose my ideas. And the Bessie one was, for example, it was one of those ones that I've always wished that we'd gotten an actual Bessie set. And fun fact for those who don't actually know, there was one that was actually prototyped up. It exists. There's only one in existence, and nobody seems to know where it is right now. It's in a private collection somewhere, possibly, but there is a 5-inch model of Bessie where it had the short bonnet. Allegedly, there is a longer bonnet version, but nobody's actually entirely clear on that. But it was made, and it was going to be a Forbidden Planet exclusive with a third Doctor. And I think for reasons of budget, it never happened. This is going back way, way back, obviously, to the days of Forbidden Planet. They used to have them, but it was one that was sort of there, and it was always one of those ones that I would have loved to have seen. And there was already a 3D printable version out there online,
Yeah.
which is fantastic, way way much better than mine because I mean they've really got a huge amount of detail in theirs, and it's the files are out there to buy. And it was one of those ones I looked at it and I looked at printing it, but to get down the scale I needed it, my printer just wasn't up to scratch, and I was just sitting there thinking, should I just have a go at doing my own? So I did, and it is what it is, and it's one that obviously I've seen a couple of other people make it. It's very sort of one that I'm very pleased with, and I think probably the thing that I'm probably most proud about that is there is the Whoseum, which is on Instagram. It's a huge Doctor Who place. They've got all this stuff, and they've actually made one themselves, and it's in their museum.
Oh wow.
So it's quite a personal achievement for me that to think that there's actually a Doctor Who shop museum out there with a replica of my work in it, which is quite it's quite fun. But yeah, there's lots of them which are sort of like I said, they don't really necessarily. I wouldn't say there's any that are hugely difficult, but they present a challenge. But like I said, I like to pick and choose carefully. If I think something's going to be too much of a challenge, then I will leave it for another time. But it's one of those things I look and think it's not that I won't do it, but I don't feel like I could do it justice now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's sort of one of those sorts of things. But again, like I was saying with the sonic screwdrivers earlier, it's about the challenge, and it's more sort of if it's difficult, then it's a difficulty that I want to try and overcome.
Mm. Yeah, quite fascinating, really. So what really goes into the process of making them for anyone who doesn't know?
No, so obviously, if it's a 3D printed object, then it's kind of the process is. I know it sounds like I'm oversimplifying it, but also sort of downplaying how complicated it is at times. But the bottom line really is just in a 3D printed object, design it and print it, which is, it's not as complicated as it might look because it really is just a sort of, I use a thing called Tinkercad, which is a browser based thing. And it's literally is just a case of boxes and shapes and you just change them to the shape you need them. So I think sort of the more complex models look like that, but then you've got to think about things like, so for example, the TARDISes, where are the door mechanisms going to go? Where are the hinge points going to be? And there's a sort of a larger thought process to it. But with the actual making of the figures, it's more looking at the parts that are available versus what you have to work with. So, for example, with the audition Seventh Doctor that I showed earlier. So overall, it's a Seventh Doctor figure. But when you look at the audition tape, his coat is much more slightly sort of like a frock coat, longer. So that's where I've used the Seventh Doctor one because it looks more appropriate to it. And then essentially the tie, if I don't know how easy it's quite a stiff plastic, but he's got actually a waistcoat under there as well, because essentially all I've done there is taken the existing shirt piece where he's got his tie tucked into his jumper,
Yeah.
trimmed off a lot of the jumper bit, put a bit of just plain paper at the bottom to create the kind of styling cut, as it were, of the waistcoat, and then sculpt on the rest. It's really just, like I said, it's looking at the parts you've got available, looking at what you can do, but also I think it's also looking at what your skill level is at, because obviously I get asked that many times over the years, what do you recommend to do this? What do you recommend to do that when it comes to custom figures? And my honest rules are, do what works best for you. If you are happy with the end result, then great. Doesn't matter how it looks to anyone else if you're happy with it. If you're not happy with it, don't be discouraged. You've learned how to improve your skills. And probably the biggest rule, the most golden rule, is it takes as long as it takes. Because I've had people come to me and say, like, I painted this and then, I put another coat on it and it can come out great. And it's like, well, how long did you take to paint it? They said, well, I painted the first coat and then I put on the second coat and then I put on another coat. It's like, there you go. You probably haven't waited for the paint to dry in between. To paint just to paint a single Dalek, to paint the hemispheres on one side, it's probably about 20 minutes a coat, and then I've got another, say, 10 minutes to dry. So in total, just to paint one side of a Dalek, one coat, 30 minutes. Depending on the paint, I might use, say, another 2 or 3 coats. So just to paint the hemispheres on a Dalek, that could be a good 2 to 3 hours work. But the bottom line is, I know by taking that time, I'm going to get the end result I need,
Yeah.
or the end result that I want. And it really is just a case of there's no outside of the obvious, there is no right or wrong way to make customs figures. You do what you decide you want to do in the way that you decide to do it in a manner that you are happy to work with.
I think
That's, it's like most things. It's time. You just got to take your time.
one of the wrong ways to make custom figures was when I was growing up, I used to be inspired by some custom figure creators, and I used to rip the heads off and put them on these, and thought that was. I mean, it worked sometimes. I mean, the Sixth Doctor's head on the Fifth Doctor's body, I thought
Yeah.
it's decent. It was, it obviously wasn't accurate, but as a kid, I was happy with it. Problem is, I lost most of the parts, and most of those figures are now have no hands or heads.
But the thing is, at the end of the day, it's a learning curve. You look at that sort of thing, and you think, yeah, I've lost a lot of parts, things like that. But you've started. Everyone's got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And if it's a case of that you're just slapping on paint or something, or you're just doing head swaps and things like that, it's a good starting point. And it's one of those things that, like, for example, you obviously did that because you wanted the regeneration Sixth Doctor, which is obviously quite a sought after figure. But if it worked for you and you were happy with it,
Yeah.
then that's the bottom line. Is if you've come up with a result that you're happy with, the only thing that I would put on the back of that is, if you've got spares, mate, or you've got spares and things like that, keep them, because they're like gold dust, half of them these days. Or even if they're really, really obvious things, like I don't know how many like Laszlo figures, pig Laszlo figures I've had over the years, and I've had so many of them in the bottom of my box. Never thought I'd find a use for them, and then in it wasn't. I don't think it was Resolution. Was it Revolution of the Daleks? The one where you had the 13th Doctor in prison and she meets Jack.
Yes. Oh, and that
Uh,
hurt.
and and all of a sudden I was looking at it thinking, oh right, they're in prison jumpsuits. I'm going to get me Laszlo figures, and that's what you never know what's going to come up. You never know what's going to be useful. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things that I would highly recommend always keeping parts and things like that, just because you might end up with a box full of things that you're never going to use, but you never know when they're going to come in useful.
One thing I actually always like to ask creatives on this channel of any kind is about burnout. When it comes to figure creation, has there ever been a point where you've reached burnout, and what advice would you give people for sort of going through it?
I would say there hasn't, because for me personally, I've always recognized that it's a hobby. It started as a hobby. YouTube as well started as a hobby. I do it as a hobby, and it was one of those things that I think it might be an age thing because
Mm.
obviously when I started YouTube 2014, so it was quite a while back now, almost 10, almost 10 years ago now. And I think at the time I started it in sort of my mid 20s, I was sort of at a point where um I acknowledged I wasn't going to be a big YouTube star. It wasn't ever about that. It was just to do something fun. The fact that it started to get popular was luck more than anything else. But I think if I was to give advice to a lot of younger viewers and things like that who want to do it, is I'm by no means am I discouraging people from doing it, but I think you have to acknowledge that you're not going to become famous overnight. You're going to be incredibly lucky if you become famous at all. And if you really want to enjoy it, let it be done on your own terms. And I think for me, it's that kind of thing. It's that I will sit down and I will make a figure if I've got the time to do it. If I'm in the middle of doing something else or I'm doing something important, I'm not gonna stop doing that
Yeah.
to just focus on the figures. I like to use, in many ways, if anything, actually, I would say I use the figures to combat the burnout of everyday life and real life burnout because it's something that I can it's something that is mine. It's I can control the speed it goes at. I can control what needs to be done. And if I just need to sit quietly for 5, 10, 50 minutes, an hour, however long I want, I can sit there and I can do something and I can just let my mind tick over and put some music on. I can listen to an audio book, I can watch something and I can sit there and make it. And the beauty of it is at the end of it, I've come out with something productive at the end of it. It might not be something that's worth a lot of money. It might not be something that's important to a lot of other people, but it's something that I've wanted. And I look at it and think like, with everything else going on, with all the stuff that's just, running through my head, and if I'm feeling burnt out, I've sat there, I've done that, and I have achieved something. And that's what I would say it's about more than anything else is if you're if you're burning yourself out doing your hobby, it's not a hobby anymore.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's a brilliant way of looking at it. That's a
Mm.
brilliant, and there's a lot of joyous aspects to that. It's a real reminder of the fun of doing work in the fandom and just doing work for yourself.
Yes,
And I think one of the things you promote there that I think is so healthy is sort of a work hobby balance and a life hobby balance.
exactly. You've got to have that because at the end of the day, if it's a hobby, like I said, if it's a hobby that's burning you out, it's not. But I think the core thing is if it's not fun anymore, stop.
Yeah, yeah,
That's really it, and I think that can be applied to many things, but especially when it comes to sort of doing this stuff. If you're feeling tired of doing it or you don't want to do it, then don't do it. Nobody, you are the master of your own
yeah.
life.
I think if it's not fun anymore, slow down, slow
Yes,
and regulate yourself because anything fun can stop being fun if you push yourself too much, I think.
yes, very
Um,
much so.
it needs to be limits for mental health and everything, and I think that's some great advice when it comes to uh burnout in general. But
Hmm.
going into some of your other content now, discussing
Yes.
let's discuss some of your fan theories, of course, which is
Yes, my interesting fan theories, which have ranged very much over the years. But again, it was one of those things that I think it was, when I started doing YouTube, I had ideas. I thought this is a fun idea I'll share with people. And it's just become one of my, I think, one of, if not my most popular
too
video
much.
series. Um, just because I think it's one of those things that people like to theorize, people like to have ideas, and of course you do get the side of people who are like, well, that's different to my theory. I don't think that's correct, and that comes with the territory. But I think for the majority of people, 95% of the people that watch those videos, even if they don't necessarily agree, it provokes thought and it provokes discussion, and that's all I've ever really wanted to do with those sorts of things is thinking, here's an idea,
Yeah,
let's see what people think. And there's been times where there's been ones where I've been proved absolutely wrong, which is great because I look at it and think like the reason I did this, I
yeah,
came up with this theory is because there was a gap, and now there's no gap there. That's great. We've had it filled in.
yeah,
But then there are other times when I've done theories that are sort of not necessarily ever going to be filled in, or they might be filled in future, but people are looking for a sort of answer of how to link things together. And I just sort of look at it and think like, this goes to that, that goes to that. There you go. There's your answer. And I think it gives people. I like the fact it doesn't. It sounds like I'm blowing my own trumpet there, but I like the fact that it gives people um enjoyment in the series
Yeah.
because it means that they can continue to enjoy it without necessarily having to worry about how something has happened. I'm not saying that my theories are canon,
Oh,
but it is a case of while there is no canon, it's as good as, unless somebody comes up with a better theory, in which case I'm more than happy to hear it. You know, it could be. There's been quite a few times where I've changed my theories based on hearing other people's.
yeah. I think that's something so brilliant about fandom culture in general is when things become a discussion and when things are less strict, I suppose. It's always like people putting
Mm,
out videos, people put out and it leads to discussion, and it's when it's healthy and friendly discussion, that's brilliant. And I feel like
mm.
every theory, no matter how wrong it is, should be welcome, should be. And
Yes, exactly.
I think your videos do a brilliant job at doing that. What do you think is the sort of nichest and sort of weirdest theory you've kind of come up with? What's the kind of in your
Well, there's always room for when it comes to theory. My remit is kind of try and fit it into as much of the narrative as you can. But there are times where because Doctor Who is known for its contradictions and continuity and issues and things like that, there's always going to be bits and pieces that you can't add in, and you can't add everything together. So you have to pick and choose carefully. But I think one of the more niche ones over the years, which has actually proven to be quite popular. And I have yet to find someone who's come up with a. Again, I don't wish to sound like I'm blowing my own trumpet. I've yet to find someone who's come up with a more plausible theory. But what I mean by that is someone who has come up with a theory that actually sounds like a better idea that would fit into the narrative universe. And it's in the Torchwood episode. Now is it? I don't think it's Fragments. It's the one with the boy Jonah who gets taken by the rift, and then he comes back and he's grown up
hold on, I'm
and he's
trying
being held in the Torchwood facility.
it might be fragments, I
I
think.
want to say it's Fragments, but I don't think it is. To Google, while you're googling it, so yeah, so the idea with that is that he talked when he comes back, he says that the rift transported him to a burning planet, and a man pulled him from the flames, saved him, and he looked into the heart of a dark star, which drove him mad and things like that. And I really just in my head, it was the idea was that the man that pulls him from the flames is the Eighth Doctor
Yeah,
because he says I'm always there to help, and he puts him on a prison, he puts him on a not a prison ship, on a transport ship to take him away from the star system. And I know a few people have come back and said, oh, maybe the planet's Gallifrey. And it's like it doesn't quite fit into it being Gallifrey, but when you consider that so many worlds burnt in the Time War, it makes sense that he would have landed on one of them, and then perhaps the dark star he looks into is that planet collapsing.
yeah,
And so it was the idea that it was a really sort of niche idea, but it literally just stemmed from he says a man pulled me from the flames. Flames were, planets were burning in the Time War. We know that the Eighth Doctor was helping people. Could have been the War Doctor. We don't know. But it was just one of those things that it was just a really simple link, but it's one that people really seem to like. So
yeah,
I would say that's probably definitely one of the more niche ones that I've come up with at present time. I'm sure I've got plenty and plenty of other ones in the future. But I mean, what I tend to do with the theories is I jot down an idea, and then half the time I'll do a thumbnail as well, just a temporary thumbnail in my fan theories folder so I can remember what it is. Because other times I'll write it down and then I'll forget. If I do a thumbnail, at least I can think, oh, I remember that's what I was thinking. And I've got about 20 thumbnail. I've got about 60 thumbnails so far for fan theory videos I haven't done. 20 of which at least are now redundant because the gap has been filled in or it's been explained. But I love that. It sounds like it's one of those things you'd think it would be really frustrating, but I absolutely love it when I go there and think, oh, I don't have to do that now because that's been explained. Because by explaining that, it means that yes, it's one less video for me, but it's one more piece of the overall narrative. And it's interesting how it can have a ripple effect because sometimes you might find that because one thing has been explained, it means that this theory now doesn't make sense. So I've got to go back and rethink it, which is great because it gives me some more time to think. Alternatively, it might be filled in and it raises another question, which means I've then got to come up with another theory. It's not one of those things that I ever get downcast about when a theory is proven wrong or it's made redundant because it's like this is great. This is why I do these theories to fill in these gaps. If the gaps get filled, great. If it creates more gaps, then great. I can do more theories. It's a win-win.
yeah. It's absolutely brilliant. It's always absolutely brilliant hearing your theories. It's and by the way, the episode with Jonah was adrift. By the way,
Adrift.
That's it. A drone.
Fragments was probably right after that. Then maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Fragment.
Fragments with I think was the penultimate one for that series too. I think.
Yeah, the flashbacks with
But yes, Adrift. That was the one.
yeah, and it's a very interesting theory. I feel like it's a very fun theory. I like that, and
It's a
it's
fun theory for a dark episode. It brings a little bit of light to what is a very dark episode.
yeah, that's very much an understatement. She is. Whew, I remember showing that to my flatmates for the first time.
Yeah, it's I mean it's one of those things that it's a brilliant episode. It really sums up Torchwood. It's a brilliant episode of Torchwood, but it is one of those ones that if you go at, eh,
If you're going in it,
I like it because it really shows how dark the
yeah,
Doctor Who universe can be and horrible it can be. It's not all lovely planets and sunshines and things like that. The Sarah Jane adventures always portrayed that side of the fun side of things. Doctor Who was kind of like, well, it's not quite the nicest place in the world, but the Doctor makes it better. And then Torture went, no, it's a horrible, disgusting place.
yeah. I think I won't go too much into graphic detail because it
Yes.
but one of my favorite scenes in Torchwood is I believe it's in day one of Children of Earth, and it's when I can't remember his name, but the nurse is talking to Gwen about the recent increase in mortality
Yes.
due to the
Yeah. And he talks about how that woman's lost all hope, and it's heartbreaking, but it's again wonderfully written.
oh yeah
Um, Absolutely fantastically written. And if you haven't seen Torchwood and you can deal with very emotional storylines and plot lines, and I would highly recommend it. To be fair, even if I was gonna say if you struggle, not struggle with emotional storylines, but if you like a good emotional storyline and you are okay with getting emotional, then I would also highly recommend Torchwood because it really is one that
I think
it
what
really puts the drama in Doctor Who, I think.
Torchwood is I think it manages to balance when to show you something and when to tell you something. So
Yes.
Jonas screams, that's always going to be up there now. That is
Yes.
image that is
Mm.
so impactful and lasting. But hearing about it from the nurse and hearing about it instead of seeing
It's
uh
it's almost worse.
words, because yeah,
Mm.
I know you've watched those episodes, you've enjoyed those episodes of television, you've enjoyed
Yeah.
Nations of Earth, and now you're hearing about these normal people who have,
Mm.
driven themselves to, yeah, because of it. It's a fascinating show, Torchwood. I highly recommend it to,
Mm.
uh,
Definitely.
yeah, 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 and it's quite interesting how theories can link a lot of niche and expansive media to everything you
Mm. I
choose.
mean, now you've just said that, I'm just thinking back to my theories. I tell you that I honestly, without rewatching the video, I couldn't tell you what the link was, but I think actually my most niche video, and I had to put it in the non-canon section of my fan theories because it was one of those ones that was so outlandish. And it was the idea that Scream of the Shauker is a sequel to Curse of Fatal Death.
Okay, that's interesting. I
I
think
if I can't tell you, I could not explain the theory to you, but I would recommend go and watch the theory on my channel. It's in my non-canon fan theories, and I had to put it in non-canon because I was like, I can't say this is canon. But when I started linking it up, and I was like, annoyingly, it makes a lot of sense. And I
that's
think the link, I think the actual linking narration, the actual linking part was the fact that the Schalke Doctor and the Doctor, the 10th Doctor that Richard E. Grant plays in Curse of Fatal Death. It was literally the fact that they have the same sideburns. That was my link. It's just insanely stupid, but I loved it, and that's what I like about the fan theories. Is every now and again you really can throw a curveball in there because you come up with an idea thinking this just makes no this is utterly ridiculous, and it's annoying how much sense it makes. So I stick it in non-canon because I like to think that the majority of my theories can fit into the canon, but every now and again you will get one where you think I really don't want this to be canon, but it's too good not to share. So I stick it in the non-canon section.
imagine how many furries there are going to be now because of the bi generation. and Russell.
Oh, with so many of them. I mean, I've definitely already seen ones that are like the multiple different versions of the Ninth Doctor
Yeah, by
because of the bi-generation. But then it was like people turn around and say, yes, but we've had Rowan Atkinson, we've had the Christopher Eccleston, and we've also had Richard E. Grant. So maybe it was a tri-generation. It's like, oh, God.
although
I get where you're going, and it's annoying because I look at it and think like you are literally trying to just crowbar this in, and annoyingly, I really like it. The one that I've always liked for the Schalke one is that it's the Schalke Scream of the Schalke is a follow-on from Russell's Doctor Who and the Time War short story.
that's what
Because
I
obviously that ends with the whole things have happened, and it actually really does dovetail really nicely into the two
yeah.
with what we know of the Schalke Doctor and everything like that. It really does work very well. So that's my personal theory is that that's how you link. That's where Scream of the Schalke leaves off.
I think I mean at the end of the day, these furries sort of highlight the best of I think the Doctor Who community. You know, the one that's
Yes.
and is so passionate about the show and linking everything together. Not always linking everything together. Uh,
Trying to, but not trying to. Always trying to.
just having fun with it. I think that's the main sort of message that I love from all of
Mm.
it, is that just having fun with it. And I
It's just it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, you know, it doesn't. I think it's one of those. It's one of those good things. The good side of the Doctor Who community is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what race you are, what religion, gender, how you identify, anything like that. It's just the show brings everyone together, and you could sit in a room full of people that you've never met before, that you've never talked to before, and you can just have these massively in-depth discussions about the series. And it might be people that you would never necessarily see or interact with day to day, but you just come together as a community, and it's the one thing that unites everybody, and that's, you know, like I said, that's the one thing that I love for all of its without going into obviously too much obvious detail because we'd be here forever, for all of its negative sides, which it's fair to say that it's had its fair share of issues and problems and things over the years, and I'm sure it will to come, but the majority of the people in the Doctor Who's community are decent people. It is the few that end up spoiling it, but the majority of people are so open, so welcome, happy to discuss, talk about, interact with, meet, and just share this love for this amazing show that is constantly ever changing, constantly updating, constantly educating people. You know, and it really is one of those things that I don't think it's I find it very difficult to really find a negative for why you shouldn't be part of the Doctor Who community. Obviously, it's very much each to their own. I appreciate. I'm not saying you must join the community, but I think it's like one of those things that if you're interested in Doctor Who and you're not sure where to start or you're not sure how to become part of the community, just join some groups, chat to people on Twitter, because if you're a new fan and you want that, people will just welcome you. They really will, you know.
I think that's a wonderful point to end on, really. If you have anything to promote, of course, it'll be in the description, but by all means, the stage is all yours to.
So I don't really have much more other than the usual. So please go and check out my YouTube channel. I'm on sort of mini hiatus at the moment because I'm currently it's my usual Christmas hiatus. But then in the new year, we've literally just bought a house. We've got lots of mortgage stuff and things like that to be going through. But I am sort of going to be putting up more videos in the new year. So there's always something up, always something coming up, whether it's a custom figure video, or it's a fan theory occasionally. We've obviously got some product reviews coming up and things like that. Please also go and check out TT Productions, Overton Audio's Dwem, where obviously we do all these fantastic, amazing audios as well. Everyone puts so much work and so much love into them, and I love doing all of the audio stuff because it's just a good, fun group of people to have friends with, to be with, and you know, and have friends with and have fun with. And of course, please go and check out Mr. Rassilon Productions channel to see the amazing 100 Doctors, because I think we're all anticipating how this is going to come out. We're literally, you know, every time it comes up in a group chat, everyone's like, "Oh, I want to find out what's going on."
I hope it lives up to expectations. Well,
Oh,
thank
I am sure it will.
And again, check out all the links in the description. And yeah, thank you everyone for watching. Make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, all of that stuff. And thank you. Bye bye, everyone.
Bye bye.